Detroit Lions are officially re-signing defensive lineman Myles Adams, I believe, to a one-year contract. We don't know the details on this contract, but Myles Adams is back. Now, he only played 55 snaps for the Lions this past season. 55 snaps, came from Seattle. He had a injury history that kind of plagued him, but he was a talented player. I think he fit in well stylistically. He had potentially his best season against the run as a Lion this past year at 6'2", 285. I think he just fit in to what the Lions were trying to do stylistically. And we've touched on this a little bit with kind of the umbrella looks for what the Lions are trying to be defensively. And obviously last year they were all beat up on the defensive line, so they just started bringing in different pieces. And I think Myles Adams thrived within the Lions system. Now, we only saw him 5 snaps in the playoff game. We did see him on the field. He was productive. And the one thing that he always carried with him was the ability to get after the quarterback.
Firstly, to show some clips from Minnesota where he basically lived as her 3 technique when we were completely down defensive linemen. We had Pat O'Connor playing nose tackle. I remember on signing Myles Adams just thinking there was so much juice and upside as a pass rusher. You see it in the first step there, more so than Jonah Williams, who is a little bit of a consistent run defender. But the natural low pad level that he plays with that can consistently create leverage, the late winds that would show up, and you see that through that jolting power that he could create in the chest. He could really thrust and roll his hips into that contact. And you see it here with even some of the push-pull move where there's little variance to his pass rushing ability as well. He's always had that extra juice to his pass rush game. And I think especially when they put him in a 3 technique, you got to see his quickness shine a little bit more there, dealing with some interior offensive linemen. In terms of the get off, it was a little bit more effective. And I think he really leans into the way that he utilized natural leverage both as a pass rusher and as a run defender. Now, that walk back wasn't always sustainable and it would kind of die off, but the ability to jolt guys, create space, and then continue to work within his agility and footwork was always noticeable. And you would even see it like on screens when he'd have to go out and defend those in space with Seattle in the past. I think what's also important to keep in mind about the defensive tackle market as of now is it's really 2 layered. It's either you're going after a veteran that's older, that has produced, but he's on the older side, and you're probably going to have to wait a little bit before those guys make their decision. And then you have players that are maybe a little bit more unproven, that are kind of towards getting a prove it type of deal. And this, to me, in a way, is the Lions going after one of those prove it type of deals, but it's a player that's already been in the system. And as Brad says, bringing back known goods is a priority. I think you see the intention and detail with the way that he entered at the point of attack as a 3 technique using that quickness, but specifically it allowed him to open up a lot of shed ability, to lock out, work over gaps. And of course, we touched on the athleticism aspect. I think for the Lions here, when you look at the free agent market, as quiet as day 2 has been, it's because it's not a very strong free agency class. And a guy that performed well as a run defender for really the first time consistently, but also shows what he can as a pass rusher. Here you see some of the suddenness, that ability to play low so he's able to sustain some contact balance when getting an edge. That's something that teams like.
This is what he did well. He got after the quarterback. For the Lions this past season, 3 pressures and limited snaps that he had. Stylistically, why he fit for the Lions to play like this. And I would also say this. We know Lee McNeil might miss the beginning of next season. This is, of course, not, hey, this is Lee McNeil's like next guy up. This is a replacement. But he is capable of stepping inside and outside. There is flexibility there. I would also keep an eye on a guy like John Kaminsky. I had talked about him potentially as like a minimum deal the Lions could bring back. I wouldn't be surprised here if Myles Adams is also on a minimum deal. But I think bringing him back makes that potentially less likely. But in the case that you don't have a Lee McNeil to start the year, you probably wouldn't want him to be your starter, but he's capable. Now we can kind of rotate in with Mekhi Wingo, similar build, similar skill set, similar position flexibility. And he can step into that role and be capable there because he does bring some juice as a pass rusher. Like I said, he's always brought that. He just hasn't been on the field for that many snaps, but he's never really found his home as a run defender. I think until last season, he found his home. Now, we did see, like, okay, he'd play a little bit beyond the line of scrimmage. He wasn't always living in the backfield of teams and the offensive line at the point of attack, but we did see his length. We saw the leverage, and I think that he just fit for this. He was a fit for a guy that would win his gap, would press guys to the opposite side, and be able to play that gap and a half roll. So, for me, I thought this Green Bay game, I think this is the game he played about 20 snaps against Green Bay. Game specifically was kind of the coming out party of, okay, this works, this fits for him specifically. And we had a couple of guys that we brought in this might be the only one that we actually bring back out of this entire mix because I think it fits well. So the inside-outside flexibility, of course, is there. We kind of can look at him as one of our, big defensive ends like Josh Pascal, but I look at him more like Mekhi Wingo. I think he kind of fits that style. And then he always brought this, man. He was agile. We saw the footwork, the second effort wins that he would throw in as well. He was a big effort piece against the run. So I think that's the big thing for the Lions is that it came together as a run defender. He found his spot. He found his home, I think, as a run defender this past season. And as a pass rusher, he's always shown that ability to kind of win his gap and play through that. And I think that that's the thing that he was missing to kind of find his spot. So this is a move that I'm assuming is going to be on a minimum deal for the Lions this offseason. I think it makes sense. He's still a young player. And again, for the Lee McNeil injury, I think it's a good spot to bring him in because he could potentially be your backup with Lee McNeil missing the beginning of the season there. They're probably going to have to bring somebody else in. But if you look at the Lions defensive line right now it would be Lee McNeil, the starter, probably going to miss the beginning of the season. Your backup at that point is probably Mekhi Wingo. And now you throw Myles Adams into that mix. He's a little bit undersized for your true defensive tackle, but he does fit in stylistically. I kind of view him as like a big 4-3 defensive end that can kick inside at times. He's kind of like Taquan Graham, a very similar build from Atlanta that I was interested in this offseason. I don't think he's been signed yet, by the way, so that's still something that's on the table. But I also think he kind of fits as like a true 3-4 defensive end as well, which is what the Lions are looking for. So stylistically, I just think it made sense. It all kind of lined up here to bring him back. And I think he found his home. I'm sure Myles Adams wanted to be back because he hasn't been able to find a consistent landing spot. So welcome back, Myles Adams. I'm assuming it's a minimum deal and a 1-year deal.